What's up, Buttercup? Welcome back to my channel. My name's Nicole, and today's spoiler-free book review is Mort by Terry Pratchett. 4 stars for the 4th book in the Discworld series and the first book in the Death sub-series of the Discworld series. Does that make sense? It can get a little confusing, but just to let you know, there's about 40 books in the Discworld series as a whole, and then there are sub-series within the Discworld series. So this is book number 1 of Death, and you can read out of order, though I have elected to read from publication order. So I've read the first 3 books, and this is book 4. Now I'm going to read, before we jump in, the blurb on the mass market paperback. It's fairly accurate to the story. Death comes to everyone eventually on Discworld, and now he's come to Mort with an offer the young man can't refuse. No, literally can't refuse, since being dead isn't exactly compulsory. Actually, it's a pretty good deal. As Death's apprentice, Mort will have free board and lodging. He'll get use of the company horse, and he won't have to take any time off for family funerals. But despite the obvious perks, young Mort is about to discover that there is a serious downside to working for the Reaper Man, because this perfect job can be a killer on one's love life. I really enjoyed Mort, especially seeing Death so much, though I know people have said that they wanted to see more Death. I agree, I always want to see more Death, but it is about Mort being an apprentice to Death, so I understand that fans of Death want to see more of him. Hi, hello. But, you know, the sub-series goes on and on. So I think this was a pretty good introduction to the sub-series, Death, Death's adopted daughter, etc. and so forth. Mort is a pretty cool main character. I would say better than previous main characters. Sorry, not sorry. Rincewind. But I think everyone kind of agrees with that. Rincewind gets a little better as that sub-series gets on, but you know, if you're reading in chronological / publication order, you can definitely see the differences and the growth between Mort-esque, who is the main character of Equal Rights, which is the 3rd book, and then Rincewind, which is the main character of book 1 and 2. This is a bit more serious than Terry's other 3 books I've read so far. I'm, like I said, reading in publication order. I enjoyed Equal Rights. That's 4 stars, and that's the first book of the sub-series of The Witches. And, you know, like I said, 4 stars for Mort. I think a lot of Discworld fans and Terry Pratchett fans really say that Equal Rights onwards is where Terry Pratchett begins to shine, and then of course in later books he is full out shining, amazing, love to see it. And I definitely agree, Equal Rights and Mort, completely different in my opinion than the first 2 books with Rincewind. And just FYI, I have done book reviews spoiler free on all those books, and they're in the description box below if you want to go backwards. But anyway, I think Equal Rights, and even the book 1 and 2 of Discworld, has a lot more satire and sarcasm compared to Mort. Not like there's no humor, just less of it. I laughed out loud quite a few times, but there were way more serious, deeply felt, and even existential moments in Mort. If you don't know me well, or this is your first video of mine, I absolutely love and am obsessed with Death. And honestly, yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise for anyone that is returning, because I've said many times, I can't wait for the Death sub-series. So I was very happy to learn that Mort was book 1 of the sub-series, and yes, I'm reading in publication order, but I just need Death in my life. Not actual death. I need that Death. Okay? Okay. Do not jinx. I'm gonna knock on wood. Okay, moving on before I put my foot in my mouth. More regarding death. So I really loved reading Death's point of view. He's having an existential crisis about his job. And I liked Mort, though I prefer Death's point of view. And yeah, like I said, I see everyone's point of wanting more Death and less Mort, but yeah, we already talked about that. I think it's fine. It's fine. We get more Death in the other books. This is a great introduction. And I think that it's really cute how Death interacts with his daughter, and honestly, at times when he's interacting with Mort throughout the whole novel, and also, I would just say, the citizens of Ankh-Morpork, where he's having that existential crisis, and he's just trying to find meaning, while Mort does, you know, his apprenticeship and messes some things up. Some other characters I enjoyed besides Death is his adoptive daughter, really cute. And since this is a spoiler-free review, I won't expand on the ending of this novel, but it is very adorable and cute. And yes, I said, aw, out loud. No regrets. I also enjoyed the concept of Death having his own dimension and going back and forth between worlds. And of course, Mort does the same, and, well, you know, he messes some things up in the Discworld world, and it kind of, sort of, in some ways, transfers over to Death's dimension, because, yeah, they're connected, and maybe he shouldn't have been let go so freely so early on, but look, Death is going through some things. We all understand. I think it's interesting. I had my first existential crisis at 4 when a pet died. Okay, yeah. And I've had probably hundreds and hundreds of existential crises. So I totally understand Death, and that is a very deep philosophical, even theological concept. The Reaper is having an existential crisis about death and what the meaning of life is, and he doesn't even fully know what happens after death, and like, does he want to move on? Like, it's a lot, and that's why I say it's funny in some moments, but it's not, I wouldn't say, satirical. It is a pretty serious book about life, death. How do you handle it? How does death itself handle it? And then, you know, more messing things up, you know. We all do that from time to time, but his is kind of a big deal. So, of course, overall, I love the Discworld series and all dimensions associated with this world. Terry Pratchett was and still is a master at creating rich fantasy worlds with cool characters. And I love his humor too, even though this book just has a splattering of it. It's still a great read, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for joining me today on my spoiler-free book review of Mort. I will continue this series with a smile on my face, and more to come regarding book reviews for Terry Pratchett's Discworld. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!